how do you approach writing a novella versus a novel?
My friend Jenna Doyle, she always says she's contemporary, but she always goes with novellas. You got to start as close to the end as possible. Like you got to already be in it. And so I always listen to her. I call her Denny. I always listen to her, and I'm like, Denny says you got to start. Anytime I got a friend that expert like Louisa Cornell, I'd be like, Louisa Cornell said, like I'm like Denny said, these people said this, or and I'm like, they say this, I got to do that. So I try to go in the middle. It's really difficult because right now I'm starting the Cinderella story, but my outline is long. It's like really long. And I'm like, what is the problem? I know the Cinderella story, but then and there's no sex in this outline yet, y'all. So I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm like, what is happening? Because I know the Cinderella story, but it felt like his part was kind of like lacking because, you see Cinderella and it's like, they just fall in love with the ball, right? That's it. They
Hmm.
depending on the version. The original version, she's at the ball and they're in love. The Brandy version, he sees her, he sees her, and then he sees her once, and then he sees her at the ball, right? So there's
Yeah.
two, and I've watched them both. So mine, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? Am I just gonna stick to it? I was trying to stick to it, but then I needed more. I needed him because then that was my problem with this. What I'm proofreading now is that it was instant love, and I was like, something doesn't feel right. They fell in love in one day, and so I had to make it a second chance romance because that was hard for me. And now with this one, I'm like, okay, I can't make this a second chance romance. What am I gonna do? So I spread it out a little bit to give it some breathing room, and I have them meeting like two or three other times before the ball, but now it's making it long. But
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna go crazy about it. I'm gonna like write it out and see how we feel about it. And then if I have to speed up some part, because I'm thinking that I really can't do the whole glass to slipper portion, you know, because it's a glove actually not. So it's a glove because this is
Yeah.
for the Gentleman in Gloves anthology. That so I'm trying to see if I'm gonna do just the part where he searches, or is it just gonna be like ta-da, it's her, like he knows it's her because they've met each other so many times. But it's
Right.
also gonna be another mass situation too. So I try to start as close as possible to answer your question, but it's always like a party, like trying to, especially if it's going to be like a love match, is like
Yeah.
going to be really quick.
It's a big challenge because you have to pack in the world building, the character development, and the plot. And for it to be a satisfying romance, we have to believe that they have a happily ever after. And so
Yeah,
either they have to have already known each other or you have to cover a lot of territory really fast.
really fast. And then it can't go too fast because somebody's going to say something.
Yeah. So,
My friend Gina just read my one book, Secrets Within My Quest, and we were out to dinner, and she's like, I have one problem, ma'am. And I was like, what's your problem? And she's like, why isn't it longer? I'm like, Gina, please. Like, it's a novella. It's a novella. Okay. I had X amount of words, and that's all I got, first of all. And then it's like, so at this point, I'm trying to get use up all the words that I get. If I get 35,000 words, I want to be at 34,999. But it's so hard, especially if I'm like, because most of the time I want a time constraint of my own doing. Like this last book, I was editing my book to the last second, right? Then I had to switch over and write. And now I'm outlining this other story, but I'm like, I gotta write because this is due January 1st. And so like I gotta go and I gotta get it edited, I gotta get it proved, I gotta
yeah.
I need two editors.
Yeah. So when you have all of these books and all these novellas, do you feel
Yeah.
like your inspiration is coming? Like, do you start with the trope? Do you start with the characters? Do you start with dialogue that's in your head? Like, where does it start?
Hmm. I think it start not with a trope. Sometimes it starts with the characters if it's like a character from a different. What happens to me a lot is if from a previous book or in a book that
Hmm.
I'm writing, like some these characters stand out, right? Sometimes people say that I'm really good at second characters, right? I build them up so much. And I did that a lot because I was trying to find a way to put characters in color in my very white series behind me, The Bachelor. So I started putting this like a huge secondary character, black characters in there. And then when I made Secrets with the Marquess, I had decided I loved it so much. I was like, listen, I'm about to start making all my characters, at least some one character of color. I'm about to really make that happen. But you know, this series is predominantly white, but then book 4 is all black. So that had already put that in play. And then I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to make all these novellas I'm signing up for. I'm going to make all the, like, at least these characters, at least the heroines, they're going to be heroines of color. That is about to happen. But then with Scandal the Scoundrel, I must have did that before I made this vow to myself. And I was like, oh man, Winnie's white. Oh my goodness. And I was like, darn it, what am I going to do? So what did I do? I gave Winnie a crazy best friend, a black madam that was just so wonderful. And so it starts off with getting these characters from these other books, right? Because the black madam Kitty, her book comes out in November in the second round of Wicked Widows, right? And so I'm like, oh my goodness. So it really does start off with characters or like taking it from other books, but also it starts like in my head, I can come up with like, it'd just be if I read somebody else's book, it'd be like, what if? I like what they did there, but what if it was like this or something like that? Then I just take it and run with it. The Bachelor Duke came from watching a documentary on Chatsworth one day. Like
Wow.
I can get ideas from I can get an idea from anything and I just go with it. It's just so crazy. And that's how I come up with I'm full of ideas. It's really scary sometimes. I'm like, ooh, what if? And then I'm like, you know what? You better sit down. Like I just keep coming up with them, and
I know
we'll see how far it can take me.
There's not enough time in the day to write all the stories that we have in our heads, right?
I got to do it in my head, and boy, I really want to research it first to see if it's. I'm like, should I tell you what it is? You want to know what it is?
Yeah.
I'm kind of obsessed with it right now. So, you know, the Buccaneers, I really like the original Buccaneers. And then I was watching this new one, which is a little kind of different and more modern, of course. And I'm like, man, the poor American actors are trying their hardest to do the language, but they can't really do the language. But it's still a pretty good show. I mean, if anything can grab my attention, because you see me, I'm everywhere. So I'm out if I don't like something. So I watched it all the episodes that are streaming now. But then I was sitting there and another idea came to me and I was like, but what if they were like black heiresses? Like I wonder if they existed. And so then I'm like, well, you need to find them. So I talk to myself all the time, right? Because I'm crazy. And I'm like, you need to find it. You need to find if there were black heiresses existed and they any go to London to get married and marry anyone in the aristocracy. Like that would be huge because I'm like, what if I had a series like that? Because everybody makes these series of these dollar princesses, but they're all white. But what if there was some that were black? You know, and it's hard though because you're like, because they would take off, right? Because all the stuff they got to deal with in America, I would get on the boat in 2 seconds.
Right.
You know, I'm out. So I'm like, do they exist and can I find them? And so that's my new obsession right now. And just trying to see if I can find that story. But I just came up with this like the other day.
I love it.
I don't know if it's going to be something I can do. And I'm always looking for these stories because I need to see it, right? My imagination isn't like Beverly Jenkins or Vanessa Riley. Like these ladies, they create these characters and it's just so wonderful. But I almost have to see that it was somebody like it that actually existed. Like, so, because in the one I just was proofing, it's called A Reticule for Scandal. The father is a black ensign in the British Army. And I only found that out because I emailed, Bill Haggard. And I was like, hey, can you help me? I'm looking for something, but trying to find a black soldier. And he sent me a bunch of stuff and I went digging and I was on this YouTube and then I found this black soldier. Like I had to I had to see that there was actually a person, even though he has a very small part in my book, though, because he's just a father. But it's like I needed to see that this man could have existed.
Yeah.
He could. So I need to see, I really need to see like kind of palatable things in my hand that, okay, they were there at least.
Yeah.
And that they did have a happily ever after and make, and and I could make their story and I could run with it. And then I could make their story. But even if they weren't there, I probably could still create me some black dollar princesses. I
Yeah.
still
I
might.
feel like you will probably be able to find them, but even if you don't, I hope you do invent them. Because why couldn't they exist?
Yeah, why couldn't they? That's true. That's true. Why couldn't they?